a minute. Hello and welcome everybody. My tech guy is out tonight, so if you wouldn't mind just dropping in the comments if you can hear me. I want to make sure my microphones are working because I usually have help with this part. Can you hear me? Yes? Good? Sound is good? Okay. Ooh, that was fancy. I hope you all see those fireworks that somehow went off. Okay. So glad you're here tonight. I'm so excited to see so many of you online. I'm excited to see some of our new patients with us. Just by way of introduction, if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Emily Schill. I'm the co-founder here at shillmed. I am the Chief Nursing Officer, and I run these webinars that we do every Thursday night that help really address the pieces of lifestyle that can help you make long-term sustainable changes. And this month, we're focusing on principles of lifestyle medicine, which is a specialty of medicine, so trained MDs and DOs that focuses on the, treating the cause, not the symptoms. And so we're looking at the 6 pillars, which are nutrition, physical activity, quality sleep, getting rid of substance abuse, and then we have these 2 lesser known pillars that are my favorites, and they are, I'm going to pull this up for you, social connection and stress management. Now this is a brand new webinar. I created it for the first time this year. Most of the ones that you've been seeing have been kind of recycled and improved on. We're doing a year-long series, and since this is our second year doing it, but this is a brand new set of information. I'm so excited to share it with you tonight. So, to start out with, hopefully most of you or all of you have your webinar booklets with you tonight. We're going to start by taking this quick quiz, and I'm just going to give you just a second to ponder these. If you don't have time to really think through them or answer all of the questions right now, then don't worry about it. You can always take time after the webinar ends as well. I would say the last question is something that you're going to kind of fill in as you listen tonight. So really focus first on the top 3. We're going to start by focusing on social connection. We're going to end by talking about stress. So take just a second, answer these questions, write them down if you can. If you don't have a webinar booklet, just grab a piece of paper and jot down your thoughts. And then I'm going to give you just 1 or 2 minutes to think through that, and then we'll launch into our content. For those of you watching on YouTube that don't see the slides, I'm just going to outline the questions. The first question is, how do I feel about the importance of social connections in my life? Second question is, what social connections are most important to me? Third question is, what do I prioritize above or over social connections and why? And then the fourth one that we're going to ponder as we go through this information is, what am I willing to give up to enjoy deeper social connections? So again, I'll just give you just a minute to think through those. Okay, and I'm sure you're still thinking about some of those. We're going to keep moving through, but continue. If you've got that workbook in front of you, you can continue to jot down thoughts and notes as we go along. We're going to jump right into this. The question that we're trying to answer here tonight is, why is social connection one of those 6 pillars of a healthy lifestyle? Why does it matter? We know that we like, relationships bring us joy. They can also bring us a lot of pain. Some people have had enough bad experiences in relationships that they try to avoid them altogether. So how important is it really to focus on our social connections, to our health? We're going to answer some of those questions for you tonight. So I want to review this. I brought this up in our webinar 2 weeks ago when we were doing the overview of lifestyle medicine. So this may seem familiar to some of you, but I thought it was worth repeating as we kind of dive into this idea that social connections are so important. A study in 1979, and this is from NIH.gov, that showed that people with strong social ties were 3 times less likely to die than those who are less connected to others. That's really interesting. In fact, and this is, I think, where it gets really interesting, they found that close social ties were a protective factor with regard to health. So people who had unhealthy habits, even like smoking, which we think of as incredibly unhealthy nowadays, obesity, and physical inactivity, these are all the opposite of what we talk about in these webinars, right? These are the things we're trying to get away from. But even the people with those habits that still embraced close social ties lived longer than those who had more health-promoting habits but lacked those important social connections. Okay, so that's a lot of words, but in essence, even people with really poor physical habits lived longer than their counterparts who maybe had better physical habits but less social connection. So that's really interesting. We're gonna look a little bit more into the data surrounding social connection. So literally a matter of life and death, okay? So here's another study, a meta-analysis. So this is basically bringing several different studies, in this case 148 independent studies together, and it showed across the board that those who are more socially connected have a 50% increase in survival odds relative to those scoring lower on measures of social connection, okay? So we're literally seeing people die sooner when they're lacking social connection. So interesting. Okay, so let's dive into this even a little bit deeper. What does that look like? Okay, so what they found is that social isolation, and this is a little bit of a vague term, isn't it? Right? What does social isolation mean? It's a little bit subjective, it's a little bit person to person, but in general, we're looking kind of at a spectrum, okay? And those that are on the end of more socially isolated, they saw an increased risk of hospitalization, higher medical costs. By the way, this came from several different sources, this compiled list. Coronary heart disease, this is an increase of coronary heart disease, increases of stroke, increase in type 2 diabetes. This is really interesting. Susceptibility to viruses and upper respiratory illness. Some people stay away from people to avoid germs, you know, but isn't it interesting that people who are more isolated actually were more susceptible? Now, in some part, that is also because their immune systems were weakened by not being around people more, but also just the connection factor. Increase in stress, increase in depression, increase in inflammation in their body. That's kind of a buzzword these days. A lot of people talk about inflammatory foods, inflammatory everything. Increase in inflammation actually with more isolation. Increase in addictive behaviors such as smoking and others. Decreased sleep, which also, as a mother of 5 kids, I thought, man, that's interesting that when you're more isolated, you get less sleep. But it's true. Increase in blood pressure, decrease of all physiological regulation. We're seeing all kinds of dysregulation in the body. Increase in obesity, increase in blood sugars, increase in PTSD symptoms, and decreased survival of cancer patients with those who are more socially isolated. And I loved this line from one of the research articles I read. Social connection serves as both a predictor of risk factors if poor and a protector against risk factors if positive. So it goes both ways, right? If you're socially isolated, it increases your risk factors. If you're socially connected, it decreases your risk factors. So, you know, it can affect you on both sides. Okay. So this was really interesting too, and this kind of goes back to what we just talked about in the first slide. But just to kind of reiterate this point, the effects of social connection outweighed the effects of really damaging physical behaviors. So they actually are finding that the mortality risk is higher with social isolation than it is with smoking, alcohol, high BMIs, low physical activity, and even, I loved this, medical interventions such as antihypertensive medications and flu vaccinations. So we're connecting people socially and we're literally saving people's lives. We're increasing the rate of survival. We're helping people live longer. It's actually been identified as one of the 10 domains that's most crucial to influencing health outcomes and even treatment effectiveness. We just talked about that with cancer, right? We're seeing an increase in cancer treatment effectiveness and other treatment effectiveness due to social connection. So I hope that all of this data is helping you understand that social connection is more than just a feel-good thing. It's actually affecting our brains at a deeper level, because our brains are hardwired to need connection. And if you ever doubt that, you look at a newborn, right? Newborns that have so little ability to understand or comprehend their surroundings, and yet they respond so strongly to connection. And we've found research study after research study shows over the years that children who are neglected in those very young ages have a different brain chemistry makeup that they struggle with their whole lives. And so we are hardwired for connection. Our brains literally are programmed to give off chemicals that then increase our sense of well-being and regulate our bodies. Now, the other piece to that that's more social and less physiological is that our social norms, our encouragement, and our social control guides our behaviors, right? So our habits are healthier when we're influenced by those around us. Okay, so again, we're just reiterating here, right? This is a physiological need that we have for our physical and our mental health. So now knowing that, some of you may be out there thinking, well, I live alone, I don't feel really connected to people, so what could I possibly do to increase this effectiveness? And it's interesting, in all of the articles that I read that were really geared towards healthcare providers. What do healthcare providers do to make this part of their regular physical examination and their counseling with their patients? Nowhere did it really say a prescription, which makes sense, right? A prescription for how much of it is necessary. And that's because this is, again, so subjective, person to person. And I think that the take home here is that any increase is going to affect you in a positive way. Now, it goes without saying that not all relationships are positive, and we need to set boundaries with unhealthy relationships. We need to stay away from people that maybe haven't been good for us or kind to us in the past. And that's all a balance that we have to figure out individually. So please understand, if you've had negative experiences in the past, I'm not pushing you back to those places. What we're trying to achieve here is an ability to connect with those that give us positive energy and increase our sense of well-being, not decrease it. And certainly with human beings, it's messy and tricky, and it can go both ways. But this is looking for any opportunity for positive interactions that we can find. So here's one suggestion. There's several suggestions here I'm going to give out. If you're looking for a way to increase your positive connection and interaction with others, one way to do that is join a social group. There's a lot of different places you can find this, but in general, you're looking for a place that's going to have people that share your values and interests. Now, that's not to say that you can't learn new interests and, have all kinds of positive experiences, branching out of your comfort zone. But in general, you're going to relate most with the people that have something in common with you. So if you're not already a part of a church, that's a great place to start. Churches tend to have a really tight-knit community that includes a lot of activities, service opportunities, and just ways to connect with other people that have similar beliefs that you do. As you're all on a health journey right now, joining a gym is a great way to do that. Joining classes, especially, because then you're meeting the people that you're seeing every day or every week regularly. You can start to connect with those people. If you are struggling further, you can always go to your local library or community center. There's a lot of times a lot of community events or clubs or groups that you can become involved in, and again, spend time with people that are like-minded and maybe, creating something together, which can be really fun. If you're not already working, getting a job, even if it's just for fun, even if you don't need the money. If you're one of those people that doesn't need to work because you don't need the money, then that's awesome for you. I wish we were there. But just having a good work environment, and maybe if you're not in a place where you are working in an environment where you enjoy the people you're working with, or maybe you're working from home, you can look into a change in your job, if that's a possibility for you, just to be in a more social environment that's a positive, uplifting place to work. I love the idea of taking classes, furthering your education. That doesn't have to be super expensive. You can take classes in the community. A lot of communities offer really affordable classes that are just, anything from flower arranging to woodworking. You can also take classes at a local community college. And if you're in a small remote area, you can look for opportunities to join a class online where you're interacting online. And then using the internet safely to connect with others who share similar interests. We're going to talk a little bit about the internet and connection here next, but sometimes the internet is a good place to start. I love the idea of paint night at the library, Amy. That's awesome. And I love that you said volunteering, because that is our next point. And volunteering is so great because it's a double whammy, right? You get the dopamine from connecting with others, and you get the dopamine from giving to your community. And that can be so fulfilling. And a lot of times when we're lonely and feeling disconnected, we're feeling a lack of purpose. And volunteering is such a wonderful way to find that purpose that you've been missing in your life. So the best, easiest way to do it, if you don't know where to start, is just Google local volunteer opportunities. I remember years ago when I was single and right out of college, working my first job and feeling kind of lonely and lost. And so I just Googled, like, I was living in Salt Lake City at the time, and I just typed in volunteer opportunities in Salt Lake City or something. And I think what I came up with was volunteermatch.org, which I've posted here on the slide. But I had so much fun. I volunteered at the local ballet for a while. I volunteered with a cancer fundraising group. I can't remember what, and I didn't even spend that much time with those groups until I got too busy with my next project. But it was a great way to connect with people, and I'm still connected to some of the people that I met and worked with through those ventures. So volunteering is such a great way to connect with others in a meaningful way, and you're connecting with other people that want to serve and to give. Your local community centers, your Chamber of Commerce is also a great place to start if you're looking for local opportunities. I was talking to my mom today, and she was just saying, you know, at some point in my life, I'd love to just volunteer at the school and go read with kids. And what a cool, fulfilling thing to do if you have the time and opportunity to do something like that. There's so many opportunities to connect with others through service. Also, your local churches. If you don't have a church of your own, you can walk into just about any church and say, listen, I need some volunteer opportunities, and they'll give it to you. Our church has a website called justserve.org. If you're looking for somewhere to start, that just gives you tons of local opportunities for service as well. So considering therapy, if you're feeling like you just need somebody to talk to, obviously that's not a replacement for friendships and relationships, but sometimes it helps you unpack some of the emotional challenges that you're dealing with, or some of the trauma that maybe is holding you back from having meaningful relationships. And so if that's something that you're really struggling with, definitely consider that. Group therapy is another great way to connect with others who may be dealing with some of the same challenges that you're facing. I think it goes without saying that one of the best ways to connect with others is to consider reconnecting or repairing existing relationships. Are there relationships in your life that you would like to be better? And is there time you can invest into making those better and repairing those? Or even maybe someone you've lost touch with that would just be really meaningful to them and to you if you gave them a call and had a long chat on the phone to catch up, or went to dinner, or to, out to eat. So that's another thing to consider. And then I love this idea, bringing joy to strangers through positive social interactions. I have to share this story really fast. When we were moving here to Spokane, Washington, about, it's been 3.5 years now. And we were moving from Iowa, and we loved Iowa. We had a wonderful experience in Iowa. The people in the Midwest are so genuine and down to earth and kind. And even though I was moving back closer to home, which I was excited about, I was really overwhelmed at the thought of starting over completely in my friend circles and just, starting from scratch. We had a really traumatic year as a family, with my husband having a really serious accident that he was still recovering from a year later. And so I was just really emotionally worn down and overwhelmed. And we went out to dinner I think the second night. That it was just myself and my husband and his parents who had come to help us move. We went out to dinner the second night that we were here, and I still remember this 3.5 years later. We were walking into the restaurant, and I remember thinking at the time, oh, I just don't think people here are going to be as friendly as the people in Iowa. And some guy just on his way out of the restaurant just looked over and smiled at me, just like a stranger to stranger, like, hey, how you doing? Maybe opened the door or something, just very friendly. And that made a huge impact on me. And so I think we miss we misunderstand or we underestimate, that was the word I wanted, we underestimate sometimes the value that just really small acts of service can do for other people. I was watching a news reel with my oldest son about a month ago because he had to do a report on a current event for school. And the one that he chose, I was so proud of him for choosing this because it was just such a positive, uplifting story. But on this news site that we were watching, there was this story of this guy in New York City who had retired from, I can't remember what his original job was, but he was just this elderly gentleman, and he found all of this purpose in, he volunteered or maybe got a new job, I can't remember, at the turnstiles of the subway. And he would just strike up conversations with every person that came through, tell them to have a great day, you know, smile at them. And there were all these people that were coming forward to say, this man made all the difference in my life. It was a day that I was really struggling or whatever. And I think sometimes as strangers, we get so used to keeping to ourselves, but we can't underestimate the power that social connection has on complete strangers, both for them and for us. And some of the things that I was reading in my research on this topic was saying even just the smallest interactions with strangers can improve the chemicals in our brain because it gives off those happy chemicals because we're interacting in positive ways with others. So don't underestimate just striking up a conversation in a grocery store line or just waving and smiling at somebody in traffic. It can make a big difference to spread kindness in a world that is often unkind. Also, really quick, we're going to announce our next group challenge. A lot of you have been asking for it in July. I'll be announcing that next week. So joining a group challenge is another great way to interact with other people, even if you're not physically getting together a lot. And also just wanted to mention again that we are now every other week holding group meetings. So again, if you're looking for ways to connect, please come join us for one of those group meetings. It's really fun. Dr. Shill answers everybody's questions, and you're able to also talk to each other and kind of work through some of the challenges that you're having on this journey of weight loss and improving your lifestyle. Okay. We're going to just breeze through this because I want to move on to stress management before we're done here. But basically, as you're looking to improve your connection with others, focus on how you're focusing on them. Most people are drawn to people who are outwardly focused and who are positive and have a great sense of humor. And if you can work on developing those skills, it will make a big difference in your ability to connect with others. And just being flexible, being open to new experiences, and being willing to make time. Now, if you're somebody that feels drained by social connections, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's okay that some people may need less of that than other people. We're all on a different spectrum of what we need from others socially. But as you recognize and think through that question again, what are you willing to give up to socially connect with others now that you know the data and you know how important it is for your health? Think of it as just another piece of this puzzle. Making time to be physically active, making time to eat nutritiously, those are sacrifices that you want to make to improve your health. And the same thing is true here. Think about what sacrifices you're willing to make, even if it feels clunky and awkward at first, to connect with others and improve your health, both physically and mentally. Okay, one thought really quick. A lot of us in this day and age think that connecting online is a good way to connect, and it's also a lot safer and easier. Technology is a connection killer, and we got to remember that. It's a great place to start sometimes to meet people, but the truth is, all of the data that's coming out today is saying that people who rely on technology for connection feel more isolated, more anxious, more depressed. So remember to use it in moderation and use it wisely, and then not to replace it with face-to-face interactions. Okay, just a few sources if you're interested that I pulled this information from. Most of it was from Lifestyle Medicine's own website, and then also a little bit from the NIH. Okay, we're going to move on to stress management. This is one of my favorite topics. So I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I just want you to look over this list again, leaving that last one for the end as we kind of talk through this. For those of you on YouTube, I'll read through these questions again. I'm just going to give you about 1 minute to think about these. Write down things that come to your mind initially, and then continue to write them down as we go through it. Question number 1 is, what factors contribute to my stress? Question number 2, what helps relieve my stress? Question number 3, how do I perceive my stress affecting my quality of life? This is one I really want you to think about. How much is your stress affecting your life? your relationships, your job performance, your productivity, your life satisfaction overall, your happiness, and whether or not you recognize it, your health. How often would you say your stress has negative effects on your life? Is it happening every day, every week, every month? And then as we go through this, I want you to think about, what are you willing to sacrifice to reduce stress in your life? And as you kind of think through this question isn't in your workbook or on this slide, but the real question to ask here is, are you satisfied with how your life is going right now? Or is there something that you want to change to reduce stress and improve quality of life? Okay, so I'll give you just a second to think about that. Okay, continue to think about that. Deirdre, I just wanted to address your question. Next Thursday is the next one. Generally, we do them every other Thursday. We did take a 3-week break on this one because so many people were out of town. But I believe next Thursday is the 26th. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's at 4 p.m. on Thursdays. If you're interested in group meetings and that time doesn't work for you, please reach out and let us know. We're always open to suggestions. And Amy, what a great comment. You're reading my mind. I think you better teach the next webinar. We've got exactly what you're saying coming up. So keep the comments coming. I love them. I loved this fact, you guys. Stress is linked to high self-focus and therefore a lower sense of connection. So that ties stress and connection together. But think about that for a second. Think about your most stressful moments and how they cause you to turn inward, right? And then that furthers your stress. So turning outward is actually a great way to reduce stress. Okay, so just like Amy was saying here, is that, stress can be happy, it can be tied to happy events, and certainly it can push us towards optimal performance. We have to see stress as a bell curve, right? If we don't have any stress in our lives, we're not going anywhere and we're bored and depressed. We have this small little column in the middle that gives us this optimal performance, and that's why, stress can propel us forward. A little bit of stress is not a bad thing. So we have to stop viewing stress as negative altogether. Like, we can't have any stress. Stress is terrible. We have to get rid of all of it. Healthy amounts of stress are actually good for us. But the problem is, most of us live in this right side of the bell curve here, where our anxiety is high, where our brains are overloaded, and we're not functioning at our full capacity. And that's the piece that we want to address. So we're not calling it stress elimination, we're calling it stress management. It's not that we want to eliminate it, it's that we want to manage it in an area that helps us with our optimal performance, right? The problem often is that we get stuck in this right side of the bell curve. And what that does to us neurologically is it sticks us in this fight or flight mode, which is a physiological response that is built into us to protect us. So again, it's not something we want to get rid of. But when our brains get stuck there, then the part of our brain that is reactive takes over and shuts out our critical thinking and judgment zone, right? And that's why, if you've ever felt like you were stuck in this cycle of chronic stress, you feel like you have no control over your reactions. Or maybe you've been around somebody that's like that, where you think, why are they so jumpy and angry all the time? It's because they're stuck in this period over here to the right, where their brain is constantly firing off these fight or flight hormones, and what they need is a system reset. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how management looks like resetting her neurological system a little bit. Okay, so again, just to review, I talked about this just briefly 2 weeks ago. 50 to 80% of illness has stress-related aspects. Think about that for a second. Okay, stress has a huge impact on our bodies. And if you've ever read or listened to the book, The Body Keeps the Score, that's the entire premise, is that, we think that we can just keep going, keep overloading, keep more. But at the end of the day, our bodies are going to react to that. And so being able to pay attention and listen to what our bodies are telling us is key to both our physical and our mental health. The Academy of Family Practitioners reports that 2/3 of their appointments are for stress-related causes. We're not going to go through this list again, but look at all of the ways that stress can affect both our sympathetic, or the part of our brain that pushes us into fight or flight mode, and our parasympathetic, which we refer to as the rest and digest mode. It's kind of these back and forth. And the way stress can affect both areas is that we get stuck in the sympathetic zone, and then the parasympathetic zone suffers, right? So again, I think I showed this slide last time too, so we're going to breeze through it. But think about this list for a second. If you or anybody you know struggles with any of these syndromes, think about how much your stress may be affecting those things. We don't think about the stress being the cause of a lot of our physical symptoms, but it is. So when somebody tells you it's all in your head, it actually is. It's not that you're making it up, and it's not that what you're feeling isn't real. It's that your brain is causing those physical problems. And that's why so many people get so frustrated that's one of the reasons. I don't want to oversimplify. One of the reasons that so many patients are so frustrated, because they go into a doctor and they say, I am having this real pain. And the doctor says, we've run every test and there's nothing wrong. And then the patient says, well, now what? Well, if you think about it, if your brain is sending your body signals to experience pain, then that's not going to show up on a lab test, and it's not going to show up on an x-ray, right? And so those symptoms are real, but sometimes the way we're addressing them is backwards. Okay, so stress can paralyze our progress. Now, again, remember the bell curve, not all stress, but stress in that right-hand zone, it paralyzes our progress. Look at this car. This car has been well-tuned. It has had its oil change. It has brand new tires on it. It is top capacity, ability to function, but it's not going anywhere because it's stuck, right? And that's what stress can do to us. Okay, so what are some ways that we can better manage our stress? Step number one, you've got to start eliminating things in your life. If you're overwhelmed and stressed, and believe me, I am talking to myself here, right? This is something that I have spent the last year very carefully examining in my own life. And as I've done this, it's made a big difference. But the thing is, we all want a fix that requires no sacrifice. And the truth is, when we're taking care of our health, it's going to require sacrifice. And so just like everything else, you've got to take a hard look at whether or not you're willing to sacrifice some things that are good in your life to have a better quality of life, right? We give ourselves these badges of honor for doing more and juggling more, and it's almost like we brag about it, like, oh, I'm so exhausted, I'm doing so much. But the real winning in my book is those who are able to put their pride aside and do less and experience more inner peace, right? And that's hard to do. I really believe that the most meaningful parts of our life, let's go back to connection here for a minute. When I look at my kids, the connection happens in the in-between moments. It's not something I can schedule. It's not something that I can force, but there has to be space in my day and in my brain for it to happen. And if I don't have space, then I won't even know what I've missed, right? And so those really meaningful parts of life, there has to be spaces for those to happen. Okay, so how can we eliminate stressors? That feels so overwhelming. Most of us say, yeah, that sounds great, but I have nothing I can get rid of. And believe me, I have said that for years. But really, the reality was I didn't want to get rid of anything. And it almost took me breaking under pressure to realize that it wasn't worth it, and that these things that I really wanted in my life could go for the things that I wanted more. Committing to less, learn to say no, have more space for connecting, more space for your brain to be open to inspiration, creativity, the things that help you to thrive and grow, more space for healthy habits. The truth is, if there's no space, then you're not going to be eating healthy, and you're not going to be making these hard changes to move more. And all of the things that we're striving to do, there has to be space. Okay, Now think for a minute about how to eliminate stressors that are mental. Okay, our society has hit a huge evolution, not just in the last 100 years, but in the last 10 or 20 years, right? The invention of Apple devices, and not just Apple, but smartphones and iPads and computers, where we have this overload of information being thrown at us like a fire hose all the time. Our brains have not fully adapted to be able to handle that. And that, I believe, is one of the big reasons we're seeing such an increase in mental health challenges, is because our brains are literally like these outlets with 20 things plugged in, or like a browser with 100 windows open. Have you ever had a browser with 100 windows open? How fast does your computer function when there's 100 windows open? You have to start closing things, right? You have to start closing tabs. This is why, and this is just my hill to die on, nobody needs to take this on, but I will never own one of those smart watches where I'm getting dinged all day long, because my brain cannot handle that. I want my phone to be put away for half the day, and then I'll check it once in a while. But just having this frequent input of information that's always interrupting your thought process can be really overwhelming and can really stress us out, even without us realizing it. So here's an experiment to try. If you're feeling stressed out and overwhelmed, try putting away your devices for even just a few hours at a time. I've heard a lot of research that says just don't check any devices for the first hour or two of your day. Go outside, get up, have a conversation with your loved ones, take a shower, do some exercise, and then check your devices and see if that makes a difference to your stress levels. I think it does. I think that one thing that I feel really strongly about emphasizing is that when we talk about eliminating, we need to expect that things will get worse before they get better. That sounds depressing. But if you think about it, if you are going to address something that you have neglected for a long period of time, the initial addressing that is going to feel really, really overwhelming at first. Look at this, like this broken down hut with this overgrown, foliage. If you want to try to make this a mansion with a perfectly manicured lawn, and you're going to tackle that first initial push is going to be really hard. And I think that's true with relationships, and it's true with our health. I know a lot of us are experiencing that as we're like, okay, we're getting serious about this now. But that initial push is going to be tough, because you're choosing to face something that's been neglected. And there's no shame in that. Every single one of us is juggling so much and neglecting some parts of our life while we focus on others. So turning back to that neglected piece is going to be painful at first, and that's okay. You have to remind yourself that you're choosing to face the hard so you can experience something better than what you're currently experiencing. You're going to have to go through something hard to face this overgrown foliage, but what you're going to experience with that beautifully manicured lawn when it's done is going to be worth it. Same thing with our relationships, same thing with our health, same thing with our mental health. If you're going to address your stress levels, it is going to be hard at first. You're going to feel more stressed out, because you're suddenly putting a magnifying glass on your stress where you probably got pretty good at ignoring it before. But it's worth it, because the improved mental health you're going to experience afterwards on the other side of it, when you've learned those skills, is going to dramatically improve your quality of life. Okay, this also goes back to what Amy was saying. I love this idea. Stress is 10% what is happening and 90% of my way of looking at it. That is so helpful for me to remember when I'm stressed out. How much of this can I just shift or reframe my perspective? You're not a victim. You have control. You can actually control how you view and respond to your situations. And that goes with this next quote that I also love. Our response to stressors can either be mindful and productive, or make the situation worse, typically because we're unable to accept an existing stressor. So how often do you make it worse for yourself just because you're unable to accept that it's just a stressful situation? You're fighting it instead of just accepting it and having a productive response. Now, this is a skill, right? It's a skill, and if you don't have it, then it's going to take some work and a little bit of an uphill climb to develop it. You're going to have to fight against your natural tendencies to see the world a little bit differently. But think of the power and the peace that comes from taking control and being able to say, I control my response to this, right? And I love this. The existence of stressors is inevitable. Some can be changed. Some must be accepted. Much of the stress we experience, however, is optional. How empowering is that statement? I love that. I'm not great at it yet, but I am so encouraged and empowered by that idea that much of the stress I'm experiencing is optional, and I can choose a different way. Okay, we can keep practicing. This is a pretty complex diagram. I'm not going to go into great depth. You can screenshot it and look at it in a little bit more depth later if you want to, but it's just talking about the different waves in our brain and how it can affect, the way that we think and respond to things. But just, at the end of the day, there's really no magic bullet for stress management. I feel like I spent a lot of the last couple of years where really the stressors in my life are higher than they've ever been, just with a lot of different things that we've added in, and nothing major, but just a lot of things that I've been juggling. And I kept looking for this magic bullet, like somebody tell me how to reduce stress, and I want to do it in 5 minutes, And the truth is, we're looking for a nervous system reset, and there's a lot of research that says just taking a big deep breath and walking outside can reset your nervous system. Now, that's not going to fix everything, but if you're looking for a fast reset and you're viewing this in terms of the reason I feel out of control is because my nervous system is off, right? That's a great place to start. But long-term stress management, there is no magic bullet. It's just like physical health. It takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes practice, right? And so we're looking at spending time outside. That helps a lot. Just grounding yourself to nature can shift your perspective, and it's just that fresh air can really help reset your nervous system. Lots of techniques that if you haven't trying, there's lots of tutorials online: yoga, tai chi, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, mindfulness. I used to think meditation was so hokey, but as I've learned how to use it over the last several years, I can tell you that it is sometimes just the reset your brain needs. And by doing it, you suddenly realize how cluttered and crazy your brain had gotten in ways that you didn't until you slowed down and took time to really address it. So that can be powerful. And then one last thing I want to address is rest. Rest is so important, and sleep is part of that. But just taking a break sometimes is so necessary. And this is going to sound contradictory to everything that we're telling you. But the truth is, sometimes you even need to take a break from your goals. If you need to take a day off of doing OptiFast, Robar, New Direction products and just be for a second and kind of reset your stress levels, you know what? Sometimes that's okay. If you need to take a week off. If you've ever talked to Dr. Schill about this, he's very compassionate when it comes to this. And sometimes I have found on my journey to be healthier, I need to just give myself a break and put it aside for a second. And then I have the renewed energy. And that way it doesn't become an obsession and you kind of get out of your own head and you keep it in perspective. And so sometimes just taking a break when you're doing brain work, when you're doing body work, when you're trying to make difficult changes, giving yourself grace and resting is really important. Okay, I love this quote by Einstein as we wrap up. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Okay, if you want to be less stressed, you can't do the same things you've always done. You've got to teach your brain new things. Cognitive behavioral therapy, taught by a lot of therapists, but there's also a lot of material online if you're interested. I have loved learning more about this and these concepts of reframing situations in our brain so that we can change our responses to things. We have to approach things differently. If you've ever had kids, you know how it goes, where you're like, why aren't things changing when I'm doing the same things over and over again? I'm trying to get them to clean up the house and my approach is the exact same. So I wonder why their response is the exact same, right? We have to solve our problems with new ways of thinking. And sometimes that can feel exhausting and overwhelming, but that's part of what we're here for, is that we can help you reframe your thinking. And then you go home and you practice it. And you put up notes on your mirror and you write in your journal and you say, I want to remember this phrase and I want to start thinking this way. And little by little, those new pathways form in your brain, and they do form. They take time and they take effort, and it will feel like off-roading for a while at first. But our brains are capable of forming new pathways, and we can do that with enough effort and mindfulness and commitment to that. Okay, just to wrap up, I kind of just went over this already. We basically have to make the commitment, just like with our physical health. So as we wrap up tonight, look in your workbooks and decide what stressor in your life you are willing to eliminate to improve your quality of life. Also, what are you willing to sacrifice or change to improve your connection with others? Your future is whatever you want it to be. And so many times we feel stuck, but we're not. Because even though the choices may be difficult and may go against even everything that we've ever thought or thought we wanted, we still have the choice. We have the choice to change our future to be whatever we want it to be. And that is so empowering. I put this slide up one more time just to remind you, much of the stress we experience is optional. And you're not stuck. Whatever it is, you can make those changes. We are evidence of that. We spent a lot of years dreaming about building our own practice instead of dealing with the stressors of working for the government at the Veterans Hospital, which is great in a lot of ways, but was difficult because of all the red tape. And so we made a giant plunge as a family. I think a lot of people would have thought that it was impossible because we have 5 kids and a mortgage to pay. But we said, you know what? We don't have to live in a world that doesn't meet our priorities. And so we did. And it was hard. It still is hard. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of financial insecurity, but we have choices. And we can choose the future that we want, and we can enjoy the quality of life that we want with the sacrifices we're willing to make. So thank you for joining us tonight. Your future is as bright as you want it to be. We're here to help you get there. I'm so excited. I'm working on lining up a great guest speaker on stress management. Hopefully we'll be next week. If we have to shift things around, we'll keep you updated. But thanks for joining us here tonight. I hope that you gained something from it, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. See you later, everybody. Have a good night.